Welcome to Infinite Universe with new interesting episode. They lived like gods when the spotlight was on them, but when the lights faded, many of them were left with nothing. These were the biggest music stars of the 1960s. They sold millions of records, performed in front of huge crowds, and changed the music world forever. But in the end, many of them died poor, forgotten, and broken. One famous guitar player, who is now worth around $175 million, only had $20,000 in his bank account when he died. A founder of the Rolling Stones ended his life buried in debt, while his bandmates became rich. A drummer who played the most copied beat in music history died without a home, living on the streets. These stories are not just sad, they are heartbreaking. The same people who once filled stadiums couldn't even pay their rent. Brian Jones had everything going for him in the early 1960s. He had talent, charm, and a creative mind. In 1962, he created the Rolling Stones and even named the band after a song by Muddy Waters. He was more than just another band member, he gave the band its identity and sound. While Mick Jagger and Keith Richards were still figuring things out, Brian was already leading the group in a new musical direction. He brought the slide guitar into British rock and gave the Stones their raw, bluesy sound. But even though the fame came, the money didn't. Brian's personal finances were a mess. When he died in 1969 at the young age of 27, he was deeply in debt. Bill Wyman, the bass player of the Stones, said Brian owed about £30,000 back then. Today, that would be more than £550,000. It was shocking because the Rolling Stones were already famous and making a lot of money. But Brian didn't earn like Jagger and Richards. Since they wrote the songs, they received royalties. Brian didn't write, so he didn't get those payments. According to Wyman, Brian earned only 1/10 of what the others made. And the situation got worse because of taxes. In those days, the British government taxed the rich very heavily. The top tax rate was 93%. That meant artists like the Stones had to give away nearly all their money. It got so bad that they had to leave England. Another problem was that they didn't manage their own money. Their manager, Alan Klein, controlled the finances. If the band needed money, they had to ask him. Even Brian, the one who started it all, had to beg for his own cash. Things went downhill fast. In 1968, Brian was arrested for cannabis. He had to pay a £50 fine and £105 in court costs. That might not sound like a lot now, but back then it was enough to hurt, especially since he was already in trouble with money. He was using drugs heavily, his health was getting worse, and he was not getting along with the rest of the band. By June 1969, they kicked him out. He was alone, addicted, and broke. Still, despite all this, Brian made a surprising decision. He bought a large country house called Cochford Farm in East Sussex. It used to belong to the man who created Winnie the Pooh. Brian was already struggling financially, and buying this expensive home only made things worse. On July 2, 1969, just weeks after being kicked out of the band, Brian was found dead at the bottom of the swimming pool at Cochford Farm. The official report said it was accidental drowning, but there were many questions. Years later, his daughter Barbara Marion, who didn't even know he was her father until 2002, believed he was murdered. She felt the investigation was poorly done and the truth was never told. The coroner did mention Brian's liver and heart were badly damaged from drug and alcohol abuse. After he died, his financial troubles continued. His royalties were used to pay off his tax debts. It took 13 years to clear everything. Only in 1982 did his parents start receiving whatever little money was left. Jimi Hendrix died on September 18, 1970. He was one of the greatest guitar players of all time. People were shocked by his death, but even more shocking was how little money he had. He was playing concerts that earned around $50,000 a night, which was huge back then. But when he died, he had only $20,000 in his bank account. He was buried in debt, with unpaid bills and missing money. It made no sense. How could someone so famous have so little? The money problems started early. In 1965, before he became famous, Hendrix signed a recording contract for just $1. That's right, $1. The man who offered him that deal, Ed Chalpin, later caused many legal problems. When Hendrix became famous, that $1 contract came back to haunt him. Then, there was his manager, Michael Jeffrey. People said he had connections to secret agencies and even the mafia. Under Jeffrey's control, most of Hendrix's money disappeared. It went into secret bank accounts in other countries. Hendrix was making a lot of money, but he never saw much of it. He was constantly on tour. The travel, the pressure, and the stress wore him down. He was tired, wanted rest, and needed time to write new songs, but Jeffrey didn't care. He kept pushing Hendrix from one show to the next. Hendrix started to break down from exhaustion and drug use. He tried to leave Jeffrey, but the legal contracts were complicated, and he couldn't get out. It was like the industry slowly destroyed him. Hendrix also had a hard childhood. He grew up poor in Seattle with a broken family. He faced racism, instability, and trauma. These early struggles made him quiet and gentle, but also easy to take advantage of. He didn't know how to fight back. Some experts say he suffered from something called learned helplessness, where a person stops trying because they feel nothing they do will help. When Hendrix died, he didn't leave a will. That created even more problems. His estate, which was worth between $66 million and $80 million, went to his father Al Hendrix. When Al died in 2002, he gave control to his adopted stepdaughter Janie, cutting out Hendrix's real brother, Leon. Leon felt hurt and betrayed. He said Janie tricked their father. He went to court but lost. Leon tried to make money with his own Hendrix projects, but Janie and the estate kept suing him. Today, the Hendrix estate is worth over $175 million. In 2024 alone, it made over $6.6 million. His name is now a business, managed by Experience Hendrix LLC. His famous white Stratocaster guitar that he played at Woodstock sold for $2 million in 2000 and is worth even more now. Gregory Coleman was born in 1944 and was a talented drummer from a young age. He became the drum major at Armstrong High School in Richmond, Virginia, and graduated in 1962. He started a band called G.C. Coleman and the Soul Twisters. He played with major artists like Otis Redding and Curtis Mayfield. Eventually, he joined a band called the Winstons in Washington, D.C. In 1969, the Winstons had a hit song called Color Him Father, which made it to number 7 on the charts and won a Grammy. But it was the song on the B-side, called Amen Brother, that changed music history. About a minute and a half into the song, Coleman played a short 7-second drum solo. It was fast, clean, and powerful. No one thought much of it at the time. But in 1986, the beat was included on a DJ record called Ultimate Breaks and Beats. From there, everything changed. DJs loved it. The beat started showing up in early hip-hop and rap. It became known as the Amen Break and turned into one of the most used drum beats in the world. It helped create entire new music styles like jungle, drum and bass, and breakcore. But while other people made millions from songs that used that drum break, Gregory Coleman got nothing. He never got paid. He never received royalties. Music sampling laws were unclear, and by the time people realized how often his beat was used, it was too late to sue. The legal deadline had passed. After the Winstons broke up in 1970, Coleman moved to Atlanta. He played with local bands but couldn't make ends meet. In 2006, he died homeless on the streets of Atlanta, not even knowing how important that beat had become. In 2015, British DJs raised money to honor the creators of the Amen Break. They raised £24,000, but Coleman was already dead. The money went to another band member, not Coleman's family. To this day, his grave is unmarked. Janis Joplin was wild, soulful, and full of energy. In 1966, she joined a small San Francisco band called Big Brother and the Holding Company. A year later, she performed at the Monterey Pop Festival and stunned the audience. No one knew her when she walked on stage, but when she performed Ball and Chain, she became a star. Columbia Records signed her, but before that, she had signed a bad contract with another company. That deal didn't pay her upfront and only offered low wages. She had to tour constantly just to survive. In 1968, her band released an album called Cheap Thrills, which had hits like Piece of My Heart. It was a success, but behind the scenes, Janis was struggling. She wanted more control, so she left the band and started her own group, the Cosmic Blues Band. That gave her more freedom but also more pressure. She drank heavily, especially Southern Comfort, which became her signature drink. The company even sent her a fur coat to thank her for the free advertising. But alcohol wasn't the only problem. Janis started using heroin. In 1970, she was recording a new album called Pearl. She seemed hopeful. But on October 4th, her road manager found her dead in a hotel room. She was just 27 years old. The cause was a heroin overdose, possibly mixed with alcohol. At the time of her death, she had about $250,000, which would be around $1.7 million today. That sounds like a lot, but it was far less than what her talent deserved. After her death, the Pearl album sold millions. Her family inherited the rights and made much more money than Janis ever did. Her colorful Porsche sold for $1.76 million in 2015. Her name became a brand, and her image became a business. Janis Joplin was worth more in death than she was while alive. He started using heroin and cocaine. One day, he overdosed so badly that everyone thought he was dead. They even tagged his toe and put him in a morgue, ready for the worst. But then, something unbelievable happened. He suddenly sat up and asked for water. That really happened. After that, he tried to return to music. He joined a few bands during the 1970s, hoping to bring back the spark he once had, but it never truly came back. 4 years, he drifted from place to place. He didn't have a proper home or a stable income and had to depend on government help. He moved between shelters, hospitals, and low-rent rooms in places like Santa Cruz and San Jose. Even though life was tough, his old band, Moby Grape, never turned their back on him. They made sure he still received royalties and included his songs when they could. They helped him whenever they were able to. In the 1990s, he joined a music therapy program. For a little while, some of that old spark returned. In 1996, he performed on stage for the last time in Santa Cruz. That night, he led Moby Grape again. He sang the song Sailing and then played a piece he had written for Jefferson Airplane over 30 years earlier. His former bandmate Peter Lewis often visited him in his final years. He was living quietly in a trailer near the ocean in a place called Capola. He wasn't angry about life or bitter about how things turned out. He was just quiet and tired. Dell Shannon, whose real name was Charles Weedon Westover, was born on December 30, 1934, in Michigan. Like many kids of his time, he grew up loving music. But there was something special about his voice. It had a high falsetto tone that would one day be heard all over the world. His big moment came in 1961 when he released a song called Runaway. The song wasn't just popular, it became a sensation. People were fascinated by the melody and the strange new sound that came from an electric keyboard called the Musitron. Runaway shot to #1 and made Dell Shannon an international star overnight. After that, he released other hits like Keep Searching, Handyman, and Do You Want to Dance? For a while, it looked like he had everything he had ever dreamed of. He had a huge fan following in the United States and even more in England. He drove expensive cars, rode a Honda Goldwing motorcycle, and bought a new Cadillac every 2 years. On the outside, he seemed like the perfect rock star. But behind the scenes, things were going terribly wrong. By 1963, he found himself stuck in a web of bad management. He was making a lot of money, but he wasn't getting paid properly. His royalties weren't coming in as they should, and the money was going to places it shouldn't. He had to fight a long legal battle that went on for more than 10 years. Still, he didn't give up. He tried to take control of his career by starting his own music label called Burlee. It was a brave move, but sadly, it didn't go very far. Only one song from that label, Sue's Gonna Be Mine, did well. Then, strangely enough, Shannon went back to working with the same people he had tried to get away from. He signed new contracts with EMI Records in the US and stateside in the UK. As the British invasion changed the music scene, solo artists like Shannon started to fade away. Bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones dominated the charts. Shannon's fame slowly slipped away. He kept touring and recording throughout the 1970s, especially in countries like England and Australia, but the hits were gone. With his fading career came deeper personal struggles. He began drinking heavily and relied on pills. The music that once made him feel alive now felt like a cage. Eventually, he managed to pull himself out of addiction. By the late 1970s, he was writing songs again and getting healthy. But everything he had been through, bad business decisions, lost fame, personal struggles, never fully left his mind. In early 1990, he was working hard to finish a new album and was planning a comeback tour. On January 24, his doctor prescribed him Prozac to help with his depression. But just 15 days later, Dell Shannon was dead. He shot himself in the head with a .22 caliber rifle at his home in Santa Clarita, California. He was 55 years old. His wife, Leanne Westover, noticed something had changed in him after he started taking the medication. She said he couldn't sleep, felt extremely tired, had a racing heartbeat, and experienced other troubling symptoms. She believed the drug played a role in his death and filed a lawsuit against the company that made Prozac. Her lawyer didn't hold back. He said the company was just as responsible for Shannon's death as if they had pulled the trigger themselves. Even though his life ended tragically, Dell Shannon's musical influence never disappeared. In 1999, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was later honored by the Michigan Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame in 2005. After his death, the famous band The Traveling Wilburys, which included Tom Petty, Bob Dylan, George Harrison, and Jeff Lynne, recorded a version of Runaway as a tribute to him. Arthur Lee was another unforgettable talent, known for being one of the most creative voices in 1960s rock music. But his story was also filled with pain and heartbreak. Born in 1945 in Memphis as Arthur Taylor Porter, he later changed his name and became the frontman for a band called Love. He had big dreams and even bigger ideas, and for a while, it looked like he might change the future of rock music forever. He formed the band Love in 1965 after being inspired by the music of the Byrds. The band quickly gained attention in Los Angeles. They were different, not just in how they sounded but also in how they looked. They were one of the first racially mixed rock bands, and Arthur proudly called himself the first black hippie. They played on the Sunset Strip and seemed on the edge of something huge. Their second album featured a wild and aggressive song called 7 and 7 Is, which sounded way ahead of its time. Some people even say it helped spark the beginning of punk rock. Then, in 1967, they released their masterpiece, Forever Changes. The album had soft strings, haunting horns, and Arthur's deep, poetic lyrics. It didn't scream like other psychedelic records, it whispered. Even though it is now considered one of the greatest albums of all time, back then it barely made an impact. It only reached number 154 on the US charts and did a little better in the UK, but not much. One reason was that the band kept turning down big chances. They even said no to performing at the Monterey Pop Festival, which could have taken them to the next level. Behind the scenes, everything was falling apart. Drugs were everywhere, the band members were fighting, and some were addicted to heroin. Meanwhile, Elektra Records, the label Arthur had helped bring to the doors, started focusing all its attention on Jim Morrison instead. After Love broke up, Arthur tried to go solo. He experimented with soul music, but it didn't work out. He slowly started to disappear from the music world, and people forgot about him. In 1996, things got even worse. He was arrested for firing a gun. Arthur always said he didn't do it. Later, a fan confessed, and a test showed Arthur hadn't fired a weapon. But the court didn't believe him. Because of California's 3 strikes law, instead of serving a short sentence, Arthur was given 12 years in prison. He could have avoided all of it if he had just pleaded guilty, which would have meant only 9 months behind bars. But he went to trial, and it cost him nearly 6 years of his life. While he was in prison, he didn't allow visitors or give interviews. 2 of his former bandmates died while he was locked up, ending any chance of a full band reunion. Finally, in 2001, a federal court overturned the charges. The prosecutor had acted unfairly, and Arthur was free. During the time he had been gone, something interesting had happened. Younger musicians had discovered his album Forever Changes. People were calling him a genius. Tribute concerts were held. Musicians like Robert Plant and Ryan Adams came to show their support. For a brief time, it looked like Arthur was finally getting the praise and respect he had always deserved. But his time was running out. In 2006, doctors diagnosed him with acute leukemia. He began chemotherapy and became the first adult in Tennessee to receive a special kind of stem cell transplant. Everyone hoped he would get better and return to music, but the treatments didn't work. Arthur Lee died in August 2006 at a hospital in Memphis. His wife, Diane, was by his side until the very end. Even in his final moments, he believed he would recover and be back on stage soon. He never got that chance, but the music he left behind, beautiful, emotional, and ahead of its time, still lives on. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe our channel. Have a nice day.